big warm welcome for Kate Christie.
Thank you. Hey everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I'd first like to say thank you to Village Books for hosting me. This is my third reading here, and it's always just a great, inviting space to speak. And again, I also encourage you to support independent bookstores like this one. This is actually my 7th novel, In the Company of Women, and that's what we're celebrating the release of. It released a couple weeks ago. It's a historical romance set on the home front in America during World War II. The two main characters are members of the Women's Army Corps. And they meet while serving at Fort Bliss, which is an actual place. And I couldn't resist setting my romance at Fort Bliss. So I thought tonight I would quickly do a PowerPoint that kind of gives you an introduction to women's military participation during World War II, just to give a little background to the novel. And then I will read the author's note and a quick scene from the novel as well. So let's get started. All right. So rather than ask how many people have seen this, I'm going to ask how many people have not ever seen this image. Yeah. Oh, we have a 7-year-old in the back. Okay, and you will learn of it, I'm sure, in school. So who is this? And what does she represent?
Women in the workforce.
Yep, women in the workforce, exactly. Women's wartime workforce participation, particularly in the production of wartime materials. 19 million women worked during the war, and only 3 million of them were new, which I find kind of interesting. That was a new thing to me. This is a picture of an actual, there were some color photos taken during World War II by Life, and they have this really great archive online, and I'll talk more about online archives in a little bit. But this is an actual person who worked on him. And it was airplane engines. Air power had started, during World War I, but in World War II it became the focus for many governments. And the U.S. was coming out of the Depression and had to work really hard to catch up to Germany and Japan during this war. How many have heard the win the air war and you win the whole war? Have people heard that before? So that was done during World War II. Now, how many people have actually seen this poster? 1 person, 2 people. All right, so this is less familiar to us, and this is basically trying to get women out to join the military during World War II, because of course that was not something in the 40s that women were traditionally asked to do or expected to do. In fact, by the end of the war, 400,000 women served in the military in 4 main branches, and then there were some sub or auxiliary branches. Can anyone name some of the military branches that were there in World War II? The Waves? The WACs? Well, Coast Guard, but they had a different name. Anyone know? I'll show you.
Women's Air Corps?
Yeah. SPARS, those were the Coast Guard. Thank you. And I did not plant Joshua to ask that. SPARS is an acronym based on the Coast Guard motto, Semper Paratus, always ready. The first one that the Coast Guard came up with was WARCOGs, so we're kind of glad that they didn't go with that one. Waves, this is the Navy women's unit, and women accepted for volunteer emergency service. If you think about that name, women accepted for volunteer emergency service. We only are letting you come in because we really need you. And that really kind of encapsulates the attitude of particularly the American government towards women participating. This kind of this went down into the ranks, and there was a lot of hostility towards women serving as well. And one naval, I remember reading this when I was doing research, one sailor said when asked what WAVES stood for towards the end of the war, he said, "Women are very essential sometimes." And that really kind of works on several levels, I think we can understand. WASPs, Women's Air Force Service Pilots, not an actual military branch. They were civilian. They were an auxiliary, and there's been a lot of interest since I think the late 70s about the WASPs. So have people heard about the WASPs and read some books about them? There's been a lot of stuff going on, documentaries. Check it out. It's pretty interesting. This photo is of the 6th Tow Target Squadron, and they were stationed at Fort Bliss in 43 through 45.
What state is Fort Bliss?
It's in El Paso, Texas, so it's right on the border with Mexico.
So were they really pilots?
Yep, these are the actual pilots, and there were about 6 more who flew there. Now, when I wrote the book, I did a lot of research and took some liberties. And so I took some of the types of characters that I knew about, people who were there, and turned them into characters, and didn't always use their names, but used things that I knew about them. And this was a really interesting group of women who left behind a lot of primary sources, which is great. All right, so the next one is Marines. We don't need no stinking acronym. Now, yeah. Yep, be a Marine. So they served actually during World War I. They were authorized by Congress to serve in 1918. So that's probably how they escaped the acronym Happy 1940s. Lucky them. And these people did not. So we've got, I'm going to show you over here on the right, we've got Women's Army Auxiliary Corps. Now, when the Army Corps first started for women, they were only accepted by Congress as an auxiliary unit. They would not take them into the regular Army. That changed in 1943, and they became the Women's Army Corps. And so there's a lot of confusion when you look at historical documents about, are you talking about the WAAC, are you talking about the WAC? So I started my novel in 1943, so I could just call them WACs the whole time, WAC. Unfortunately, WACs, wacky, wacko, not the best for a public that was already a bit hostile. Now, the Air Force as we know it, did not exist in World War II. It was part of the Army. It was the Army Air Forces. As a result, it was more progressive than older branches of the military. It was just kind of, it got its start in World War I and really came into its power in World War II. And so it was less steeped in tradition and less steeped in misogyny. This was the only unit, really, branch of the military, sub-branch, that was interested in having WACs in large numbers. And they put them in lots of different positions of power and really interesting work. And so I actually chose to have one of my characters be an airwhack because of the interesting work that it afforded her. And 65,000 airwhacks actually did serve in the Army Air Forces, so it was a big chunk of the WACs who served. All right, and last but not least, we have nurses. Army and Navy nurses. Isn't that hilarious, that picture on the left? So I just find that amusing. But the thing about nurses is that they'd been part of the military for a really long time, different wars that we had been in prior to World War II. Unfortunately, they were considered by the American public and also really by the military as little more than camp followers. Do we all know what that means? They were there to service the soldiers. Is how they were viewed, and sailors. Not true at all. I mean, not even remotely true, but that was the public perception. And this kind of shows, unfortunately, when all the other units came into being, that perception followed them and shadowed women who were joining the Waves and the Wasps and the WACs. And these are ads from magazines that kind of demonstrate, I don't know if you can see, but the middle one there is actually up top with a striped hat box. That's a Women's Army Corps cap. It's the hobby hat. And it says WAAC on the box. So that was the public perception initially, and the military perception followed that, or encouraged it, in fact. There was a slander campaign that was investigated. Slander meaning lots of rumors, lots of little printed materials going out, cartoons like this where, they're showing, it says, what makes you think the WAC is coming to this camp? And they're holding up a bra. This one over here says, servicemen, 25 cents to enter. And she says, give me 4 soldiers, please. I'm going to buy 4 soldiers for $1. It just, things like that. And that was an actually intended campaign by higher-up officers in the military, particularly in the Army, who objected to having women sully the ranks. And that campaign likened women soldiers and sailors to prostitutes and lesbians. And that's where my novel enters.